Happy Sunday, everybody. Steve here. Another Sunday. By the time you're watching this, I'll be packing up. You can see the suitcase there, getting ready to go. Packing up, go out on the road again for another couple of weeks. Do a little flying. Arlene's out in California right now, seeing our granddaughters, little Eva and Eden, with my son Nathan. I've been reading in 1 Samuel, and I've been reading a lot about David. And today, what is the proper time? That's the discussion. And there's a couple of stories. I always thought it was interesting. So Saul was king at the time, and the Lord through Samuel had told Saul that I'm going to take the kingdom from your family and give it to somebody else more deserving. Samuel had gone and anointed David as to be king, and Saul's after Saul. When was that time going to be? That was the big question. And there were a couple of times, there was a spirit on Saul. God's spirit had departed from Saul, and he became very depressed and angry and kind of irrational a lot of times, trying to kill David a couple of times. David ran away. Saul went after him, and there was one particular time when Saul had gone into a cave where David and his men were hiding, and David had the opportunity there to kill Saul, and he didn't. And then he told Saul, "Hey, you were in my power. I could have taken you." And Saul felt bad, left. Didn't take him long. He comes after David again, and in chapter 26 of 1 Samuel. Saul had his army, about 3,000 men out there chasing David and his 400, and David was, hiding around, and he snuck up on the camp that night. The Lord had put a deep sleep on Saul and his army, and everybody's asleep. And Saul and one of his Abishai snuck into the camp. In verse 7, David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the trench, and his spear stuck in the ground at his bolster. But when Abner and the people lay around about him, and Abishai then said Abishai to David, God hath delivered thine enemy into thy hand this day. Now therefore let me smite him, I pray thee, with the spear even to the earth at once. I will not smite him the second time. And David said to Abishai, destroy him not, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? And David said, furthermore, as the Lord liveth, the Lord shall smite him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall descend into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch forth my hand against the Lord's anointed. So they ended up taking Saul's spear and a jug of water and did the same thing. He went off a distance and said, hey, you were in my power again, and I didn't kill you. Why do you think that I'm trying to destroy you and kill you? And I'd like to imagine at the time that word had gotten out that Samuel had anointed David, that there were people that knew, David was going to be the future king. I'd like to think that there were also people who liked things the way they were, that they saw Saul as their sugar daddy or whatever, that he had the power to give land and everything else. And there was people, was it Doeg, the goat herder or whatever, that ratted out the priests that had helped David, gave him Saul Goliath's sword and had ratted him out, and then had killed all the priests, and Saul rewarded them. And I think there were probably people that were like, hey, this gravy train's going along pretty good here with Saul, and Saul had 3,000 men with him. So I always kind of wondered that. I was like, why did once Samuel anointed David, why did not everything just collapse for Saul and David become king? Well, there were people there that were motivated by keeping Saul king because they were getting the goodies. And I think that, so politically, there's Saul with a lot of people that supported him, a lot of the tribes, and of course Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. Of course, they all supported him, and because he's one of their kinsmen. So there's a lot of people that wanted to keep Saul in power. So I think that David probably recognized that if I killed him, it would ignite a civil war. Half the people would be for Saul and of course it would be Jonathan then that would step up, Saul's son Jonathan, that would step up to be king. And David, I think he probably was thinking, well, I don't want to fight Jonathan. The Lord's going to work this out in his good time. I think that's where he was coming from. I think he realized, boy, this is going to be a mess. If I try to step in and do this on my own time, which seems to make sense, that it's gonna mess things up. That this can't be the way that he was anointed by the Lord and appointed by the Lord to be king of Israel. It's not my place to destroy that. We'll let the Lord work that in his good time. I think that showed a lot of wisdom. And I was looking at Ecclesiastes 8:4-6. In verse 5, whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighted down by misery. So in our situation, I think a lot of times God's not working fast enough for us, maybe. It's like, well, I see this, I'm going to go for it. And God, I think, makes it clear a lot of times, like, well, hold on, not yet, hold. When we step out on our own and end up messing things up. God's word says that he gives us the time. He gives us the things to say at the right time, at the proper time, that we'll know what to say, because he'll give us the words to say it. And, I think back in my own career in the Air Force, there was one point in time I was an instructor pilot in Altus. And, I'm young and at the time and ambitious. And I had a career plan. I wanted to do these things in the Air Force. I wanted to be a commander and flying squadron commander. I wanted to do all these things. I had all these plans, and I was flying one day. Actually, I was getting ready to go fly with some students. Had the engines running and everything. So we were probably 10 minutes from taxiing out, and I get a radio call came up and said, "Hey, the operations group commander and your squadron commander will come out and talk to you." And I'm like, "Ooh, what do I do now?" So I'm like, okay. So I had the students sit there. I'm like, I'll be back in a second. I went downstairs. They came up on the plane. Engines are running and everything. And they said, "Hey, there is an opportunity. You're coming up on your 3 years here at Altus. It's almost time for you to go. There's an opening for a position at the Pentagon, working some particular job. I forget what it was, but it was at the Pentagon, and you're going to be around all the brass and everything else. And it's coming open. We got to give word. Are you interested?" And I said, "Well, let me think about it, and come talk to you after the flight." They're like, "All right, well, make it quick. As soon as you land, come talk to us." And so the flew, came back, got the details of what the job was, and I said, "Well, let me talk it over with my wife." And I go home and Arlene and I talked it over, and it basically was going to be a job that, again, is at the Pentagon, around all the brass and everything else. So here was your opportunity to show what you got to the people that make decisions, that really can move things and move your career. And this would be good for your career. This would be a great job for your career. I had not completed my master's degree yet, so there were some other check marks that I needed to make. But I knew, some other things I knew was jobs at the Pentagon typically are long hours, long days, working a lot. Then I would also have to do school at night and everything else. And my kids at the time were young. Bella was, she wasn't even a year old yet. And all the kids were young. And Arlene and I talked about it, prayed about it quite a bit. And Arlene more so, she really felt like that was not the right decision. That was not the right way to go. And there was another option I was moving towards. I had applied for school to go to where I'd get my master's degree and other things, and it would count as school in residence, and it would be a good thing too. And I talked it over with the boss again, and he said, look, this is the kind of job that kind of leaps frogs, and it's a good thing. And the more we talked about it, the more we prayed about it, and I came back to my boss. I said, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna pass on it, because I just don't think it's right for me. And they thought I was crazy. And I look back now. I look back at what could have been and everything else, and I know it was the right decision not to go. That the human side of me wanted to leap at the opportunity. This was going to be great. This is going to be great things. And looking back now, I got picked up for that school. I went to that school, got a master's degree out of it, and it counted as professional education and residence, which was a huge check mark for my record and everything else. And more importantly, I mean, I was home all the time. I mean, I would go to class in the mornings and typically be home before the kids got back from school. So I mean, it was there all the time. It was awesome. We got to be there. We were up there with Arlene's mother. They were stationed at McGuire Air Force Base at the time, so we were right there with them too for 9 months before they left. So we got to spend that time with them. It all worked out, and there was a proper time and a place. And sometimes I think when you get two paths like that, I think the Lord sometimes he'll either one's fine. And I've had that happen before where I've prayed and God's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? It's your choice. Either way, I'll bless you in the way you want to go. And there's been times like this where it was like, you can go that way, but this is the wait. I'm not. That's not the way you're to go. This is the way, and it worked out. So, there's a proper time and procedure for every matter, and and obviously it worked out for David, because Saul was eventually shortly thereafter killed in battle. Saul and all his sons were killed, and it basically cleared the slate, and it was much. David still had a little bit of a time, slipping in, as king, for people to accept him, but they did, and it was a much easier time, I think, than if he had killed Saul and said, "Hey, I'm king," and anointed. And I think probably half the people would have fought against that. So, anyway, I hope this was a blessing for you, and I'll try to do these while I'm on the road too. I really have missed doing these, and they are a blessing to me as well. It really gets me thinking and meditating on the Word, and sometimes I get in the trap where I just read, and just, okay, there's my chapter for the day. But doing these, really, I step back and I go, okay, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my life? When have I experienced this and everything else? It really makes me appreciate and love the Lord all that much more. So hope this is a blessing for you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.